All right. Hola, y'all. Welcome back to my channel. It is Shelly Flowers Reads and Writes, where I talk about all things related to reading and writing. And today I have a very special guest, one of my favorite people in the entire world. Her name is Kiara Sanchez, and she is the illustrator of my current picture book, which is due out in the next couple months. And she also designed the cover for my very first chapbook. So, Kiara, all right, go ahead and introduce yourself, name, pronouns, even though I kind of already did that, but.
Hi, I'm, as she said, Kiara Sanchez. Identify as she and her. Thank you for normalizing pronouns for everyone.
So, in terms of heritage, where does your family come from?
Both my parents were born and raised in Puerto Rico. Always have been there. I mean, we have a mix of people who have married into the family from other Latin countries. So our family is made up of Venezolano, Cuban is a big one, Panamanian, Colombian. But yeah, we're just one big Latin family, and my husband's Cuban. So
yeah, we're taking over. That's awesome. Yeah, I think my family has a very similar thing going on. So we have like Argentines and Colombians, and yeah, it's fun. A lot of Puerto Ricans too. So
yeah, everyone mixes.
Everyone mixes together. Awesome. So thinking about your work as an illustrator, what is your education background, and sort of how did you get started with illustrating?
So I've, as a lot of artists will say, kind of cliche-ish, is, I've been drawing since I was very young, always kind of knew from the beginning that I was going to do something with art. Always been drawing like comics and little stories and on backs of menus in restaurants and on napkins and everything. Like, was always drawing. I think it's because I was an only child too, like had to entertain myself. It's just kind of uncommon in Hispanic families.
That's super uncommon.
Yeah. To be very quiet and to be like, have a lot of time to yourself. It's not a thing. Yeah. But I, went to normal, schools growing up. And then when it came to college, you kind of get like, oh, I want to do art. They kind of like gear you towards the way of doing something that will make you money. So I studied graphic design at Flagler College. Amazing 4 years there. I will never regret my 4 years at Flagler. It was amazing. Studied graphic design there, which I do love, and I do that as a job as well. But I also studied fine art there and took an illustration course there, a couple illustration courses. If I could keep studying for the rest of my life, I would keep studying illustration and animation if I had all the time and money in the world. But yeah, that's my official education background.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have been talking about getting my PhD for years. I just paid off my student loans though, so I'm like, do I really want to go back into debt to do that? Like, if I could find a fully funded program, I think I would have already signed up for my PhD. But
I know if I could just go to art school for a very low price, I would, but it's really expensive because then you have to buy all the materials.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people miss the whole starving artist joke, is like, it costs a lot of money to keep up with everything you're doing. Like, everything costs money to make it.
Yeah. I think writers don't really have to go through that, because I feel like as long as we have access to a computer, which you could argue is a cost, but nowadays you can find computers like a Chromebook for a few $100s. So
yeah,
it's just not the same level of cost of like every single piece that you create as an artist. Hundreds of dollars sometimes are going into it. which is why prices tend to be higher and things like that. So
yeah, currently looking into getting an updated computer, and I wanted to cry at the price.
Yeah. Well, I would think like with illustrating, you can't just get like a regular computer, right? It has to have certain capabilities, or
I definitely need a lot of storage.
okay.
I illustrate on multiple platforms, of course, traditional illustration. I paint, I draw on paper. But then, the iPad came along and drawing programs on, which is how your whole book is illustrated.
Yeah.
It's digitally drawn. So, the iPad and my Mac desktop, because I can connect also my iPad to the desktop, see it even bigger, design on the MacBook desktop, and use all like the programs that I need to use for, which you have to pay for separately. There are free like art drawing programs, but there's ones that are like obviously better than others, and I want the most professional one.
So kind of switching gears a little bit, who are some of your favorite artists and illustrators, and why are they your favorite?
Well, my favorite main artist that will always pop up as soon as anyone asks that question is ever since I was little, Frida Kahlo has always been like amazing. Like ever since the film first came out when I was young, I shouldn't have been allowed to watch that film at such a young age, because I remember being confused in some scenes. I was like, what's happening? I didn't even focus on that. I focused on the fact that she went through so much in her life. So many horrible things in her life were going on at the same time for most of her life. And she was still able to see life and her art in such a beautiful way. And just like fully, she put like all of herself into that work, whether it was bad or it was happy or it was, it's very like, to show everything that's going on is in your own life is very like, I can't even think of the word. It's like she showed us underneath her skin. Like it's like
vulnerable.
That's the word. Vulnerable, extremely vulnerable, like showing through everything, through, her relationship with Diego, through her accident, through her not being able to have children, through all of her relationships with a ton of people, including different famous people. And then when I got older, I read her diary, which I don't know if she would have approved of that or not. Now that I'm older, I'm like, does she like that people published her diary? But I got to kind of get behind the mind of her, which, I mean, she's always going to be like an idol to me. Just because I want to be able in my art to show like who I am and what I go through and things like that. As far as illustrators go, there's so many on Instagram that I follow. I've saved a few. Of course, I also love people who work in animation and do illustration and storyboards for them. So the main ones are Hayao Miyazaki. He's a Japanese animator. He's like the king of animation to me. He's amazing. And he also, does the story and everything. So he's like, the fact that he can create these entire worlds is insane. I love the animator Glenn Keane, who has worked for a lot of Disney films, and probably one that's off the top of my head is when Kobe Bryant made his short film with Glenn Keane, like from the poem that he wrote, like I think it's called The Love of Basketball. It's this beautiful like animation. It's all like sketched out. It's like you're seeing the pencil drawing like come to life. It's the movement and everything is gorgeous. I recently new people I'm following. Jordan Rhodes, who's a gouache painter. He's I found him on Instagram because when everyone was sharing, you know, Black creators, Black artists, like I got to see like even more artists. And he does really beautiful gouache portraits and work that I like.
Gouache.
So gouache is, I have it here actually. It's kind of like watercolor,
Okay.
but it's more opaque.
Okay.
So you can like water it down to be more like watercolor, or you can paint it on thicker and then like add water to the paper. It's a new medium because I love, or a new medium for me. I have always loved watercolor, and gouache is a little different. So now I'm like practicing with gouache, and it's fun because I can layer and make things like brighter and darker and things like that. So it's really nice.
Interesting. Awesome. So you've illustrated a book before. We've talked about this. What was that process like, and how is it different from illustrating my current picture book, Carlito the Bat?
Well, the main thing is the first book I illustrated was with a friend of mine, Victoria, and I was still in college when we created the book.
Oh my God.
And I was a senior and I was in portfolio, and I was like, I don't know how I thought that was a good idea, but we made it work. The entire book was, I mean, both books, all books I've worked on are hand-drawn. I draw with my hands. It's just that book was drawn on paper with watercolors, and so it takes even both ways take a long time. It's just when you're on paper with watercolor, if you mess up, you start over. There's no back button on the iPad, like on the iPad, that I can just, and like I can work in different layers, which is nice. Like for your book, I would do like a pencil sketch, like a really rough one, and then I'd add another layer and do a more fine pencil sketch, and then, hide the rough layer, and then do the colors in different layers. So that if you said, I want the house to be a different color, no problem. Erase that layer, do it again. Like it's with, hand illustrating on paper, it's very like, I hope I did everything the way that you wanted to see it, because it is starting from scratch over again. So you have to be very, very sure and exact of what you want the page to look like. Also, when I look back at those illustrations now, they're a lot more simple. It still looks like I drew it. It's still my style, but I can tell the artists are very hard on themselves. I can tell like that I can draw something a little better now, or I can do the coloring a little better, but I'm still proud of it. It's still really cute. And I think, colorful and childlike, and yeah. And then we had to get all the pages scanned by a professional photographer who basically he scans professionally like art prints that you would buy in like a museum. So they have to look super, super high resolution, and the process took quite a bit of time and money.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm so interested in the process of like how artists start, and then like as they grow as artists, how those processes have changed. Because even in my own work, I look back at poems that I wrote when I was in college, in grad school, and it's like I would do these really chunky blocks of text. And in my mind, I was like, well, I just don't see the difference between prose and poetry, so I'm going to revolt by using these prosy poems. And then I think on it now, and I'm like, oh, it's just because you didn't know how to like put poem across the page and like play with words and shape and different techniques. So I think it's interesting how like we start one way, but that's kind of the process, right? Is like you have to start with what you know, and then just learn a lot as you go, and then keep pushing and pushing and pushing with different techniques.
Yeah, in both instances where I illustrated books, it was like kind of my first time illustrating a book in that medium. So I'm sure I'll learn even more down the road. Like, I just seeing how my style like even like evolves like from that. I mean, that was 5 years ago.
Yeah. I see a difference too. I feel like this is my impression of it. I feel like you're playing a lot more with like color across the page and everything. And it is really vibrant in this book, which is what I love about it. So yeah, I love your work. So
Thank you. It has to be colorful because kids like to look at color.
Yeah. For sure.
You kind of have to think like, what did I really like seeing in illustration and in books? And I even texted you the other day that I was watching videos of this book illustrator paint his pages, and I was like, this is insane, like the detail and everything. And that was all gouache painting that he was using.
Right.
And it was so cool. I was like, oh man, Michelle, you got another book we can do later?
I definitely do. So I'm like, if this picture book does well, trust me, girl, I got you. So thinking about that in this unprecedented time period that we're in, how has your work been?
Such a weird time.
Yeah.
I definitely think it's important for all creatives, just as I want to say this first, not to compare yourselves to how other creatives are dealing during the quarantine and pandemic. I feel like at the beginning there was a lot of pressure of like, you have so much time now, you're at home, you should be, creating more and doing more stuff and taking advantage of all this time. And sure, that's true. I definitely have painted more than I have in the past couple years just because I have been easily access just to be at home. But I think it's important for no artist or creative to put pressure on themselves because everyone's dealing with this time differently. Mm-hmm. Mentally, it's like some days are like, this is great, and other days and other weeks even, it's like, man, I don't feel like anything I'm making is great. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to step back. It's okay if you're not creating 24/7 during the quarantine because it's heavy. It's heavy. And my own family got really sick from it, and emotionally it takes a lot out of you because you worry and you can't sleep, and you worry when things will go back to normal, and you worry, and then things on social media and things going on. I'm an empath, so I get really down, and I cry a lot, and I get emotional, and it's okay. I keep telling myself this, it's okay if you're not creating 24/7. But I do think, working from home and being home has helped me to do more because I'm not, I guess, in my mindset, like when you're driving to and from all these places all the time, you feel more tired. And now since I'm in my studio constantly, I can like take a break and like sketch, or, once work is over, I don't have to commute. So I can just start painting, or, I definitely had more time to like think on my art and spend time with it, definitely. So that has been nice. I just don't want anyone else to put pressure on themselves that they have to do the same. Yeah, there's definitely nothing wrong with like taking a week, or even artists taking a month not to create something if you really, don't force yourself.
Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Like, what are some big dreams and goals you have for yourself?
Next 5 years. Wow. I definitely want to make Kiartist a full-time, my full-time illustration job, basically. I do think that in the next 5 years I will be a mom. That's what we want. Yeah, you're a creative mom. And I would love to be able to have like I know it's a lot more work to own your own business and do things like that, but I would love to be able to, be my own boss and, if I want to take time off to be with my family, I can, of course, and be able to work from home in the studio. There's a lot of artists that I follow that have become full-time illustrators, and it's anything is going to be a lot of work if you want it to work. But a lot of them are parents, and I have a really big family too, and just to have the flexibility to choose when you can take that time off and be with your family. And I really just want to be known more as an illustrator. I want, as much as I love design and have loved it, my main passion has always been drawing and illustrating. I just think when I was growing up, and I mean, it still happens to artists today, they say, how's that going to make you money? It's not very nurtured or thought of as a great option. Um, so I really want to be, doing illustrations for magazines, for more books, still doing custom orders and things like that, but become more organized as I go, and hopefully have a painting series in a gallery that I'm starting. We're in the very beginning stages though, and I'm not entirely sure how that collection still is gonna how it's gonna look. But it's very Puerto Rican themed, so.
Yes. I'll come there with some mango and and make it happen. Oh, that's so exciting. Well, okay, so as our last question, what kind of advice do you have for illustrators or any kind of artists who are trying to make it full-time and sort of on the same path that you're on right now?
Yeah. This is advice that I am also taking into account. Yeah. I would say just, number one, focus on show the work that you actually want to be doing. Mm-hmm. Definitely, I think when I was a lot younger, especially in design school, I tried to create things that I thought people were going to like. Mm-hmm. And then you get work that you don't necessarily enjoy all the time. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important to show work that you want to be doing, if that makes sense. Showing things that you would love to get projects similar to. And definitely don't undersell yourself. It's really, really hard to ask people for money to pay for your work, but you went to school, you put in all the hours, you got all the materials, your painting or your work or your writing is worth this much. People can pay it. It's not, I'm in a very interesting time right now where family and friends still kind of oh, could you do this? And I'm like, sure, here's my pricing. It's okay to have pricing, and I know it's really awkward. Money is super awkward, especially because in your head you're like, well, the painting won't take me that long. It's fun for me. And it's yeah, but you still got to get paid for it, especially if you want to make it full time. Yeah. You want people to pay full price. And it's a respect thing too. It's, respect yourself as an artist or a writer, and you're providing a service, you're providing your whole, it's a piece of you in the work. Also, I would always, I'm reading a book called Contracts for Illustrators. I think it's very important to, even if you're working with someone that you really like or is a close friend or something, just have something that you both sign. Even if it's simple, I even know with you and I, it was a very simple contract and things like that, but especially people that you don't know, you really need to have someone sign this is this is what we're going to do. This is what we agreed to pay. This is the due date. That way, you know, no one can take advantage of you. Because I've definitely been in situations like that, and it's super awkward. So always have someone sign something. Don't be afraid to put your price on stuff and do what you want to do. Yeah, I've heard all the excuses, but it was so easy for you. Why can't it just be less? And it's like, it's easy because I've practiced for over 20 years.
Yes, exactly.
Like, there's a reason that you cannot draw this. You're asking me to because you know I can. Like, you can't. If you think you can do it, you do it. Like,
yeah, same thing with writing. Like, this journal would not exist if all of these writers did not submit their work for free, you know? So yeah, I 100% agree. Thank you so much for agreeing to come onto my channel. Where can people find you? What kind of links and you know, social media and all that?
So Instagram is Kiartist, Kiartist. I wish I could go like this and the magical thing would just pop up here.
Well, I always keep your links in my description box because I have like advertised some of your stuff before. So.
Instagram is Kiartist. My website is kiartist.com. And yesterday I made a TikTok. So it's Kiartist Doodles, and it's literally just going to be videos of me speed painting and things like that. So it's just art based.
Nice. So exciting. Awesome. All right, guys, that is it from me today. So remember, as usual, you can find links to all kinds of good stuff in the description box down below. I also have my books for pre-order and for sale down below. You can find me on all social media as @ShellyFlowers. I post videos every Wednesday and Sunday, sometimes Friday. All right. Ciao, y'all.